Welcome to Season 3 of Connecting with Purpose. In our first 2 seasons, we explored how leading and living with purpose unlocks unique potential for us and our teams. This season, we're diving into how purpose helps us navigate change, build resilience, and elevate our ongoing performance, well-being, and impact. A special focus I'm really excited about is to highlight the transition of elite athletes into new opportunities. By raising awareness around this largely untapped talent pool, we'll bridge opportunities with businesses to create meaningful connections, drive value, and deliver lasting impact. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited for today. Don Yaeger has been called one of America's best storytellers. He is a nationally recognized keynote speaker, 12-time New York Times bestselling author, and the host of an amazing podcast called The Corporate Competitor, which I have been really enjoying since having heard Don speak a couple of months ago. Don was a long-time associate editor for Sports Illustrated, storyteller in residence for National Geographic. He is a sought-after executive coach and really focuses on helping leaders building cultures of greatness. His expertise is rooted in decades of studying and working alongside elite teams in sports and business and translating their success into actionable leadership insights. Don is renowned for his storytelling. He's been praised by folks that you've probably heard of, like John Maxwell and Simon Sinek, as the best storyteller they've ever worked with. And his compelling perspective has even landed him on major shows. You may also heard of some of these: Oprah, CNN, Good Morning America, Fox Business News, and now, of course, Connecting with Purpose. Launched in 2020, the Corporate Competitor podcast was quickly named in the top 50 podcasts by Podcast Magazine. And in 2022, it ranked in Spotify's top 5. It's really worth a listen. Don's been having conversations with all sorts of top level luminaries, Condoleezza Rice, a bunch of CEOs, Disney, Delta, Brian Moynihan from Bank of America, which I obviously enjoyed because of the rugby connection, Mayo Clinic. I just started listening to the one was it with Alan from Ford and Boeing. So needless to say, it's an absolute honor and real pleasure for me to humbly welcome Don Yaeger to Connecting with Purpose here today. Thank you so much for joining us, Don.
Thanks, Mark. I love, the fact that I get to work with a great American like you.
Everything but the accent.
Everything but the accent. Exactly.
I've got the paperwork.
I got it.
Citizen.
You've
I've
got the jersey, right?
I can sing the Star Spangled Banner, but I can't do the accent.
Well, it's good because most of the accents can be pretty challenging to listen to. But thank you.
I suppose it's still a little bit of a differentiator, and I still get recognition from my friends for not having lost it when I go home, which is also makes me feel good.
That's good.
So, Don, obviously, incredible backstory and career. You're very busy telling everyone else's stories, and obviously today, I'd love for this to be an opportunity both for folks to learn a bit more about you and connect to Don, the guy behind all the stories, but also to hear some of your perspective from some of the things that you have observed and learned from others. And where we always like to kick off is with magic moments. This is an opportunity for you to look back, think of 3 moments in your life, personal, professional. But when you look back on them with the benefit of time, you'd score them a 10 out of 10. And the reason you'd score them a 10 out of 10 is based upon one, like how you probably reacted in the moment. Now, it may have been just an incredible championship kind of moment, or it could have even been a really tough moment where you had to overcome a challenge. And secondly, you'd rate it based upon the impact that had on what came next in your life. So there's 3 questions of a cheeky way to get 9 answers, which is, for the 3, what were the 3 moments? What was it about each of them that made them magic? And if you had to give them each a name, what would you call them?
Wow. So I love the opportunity that you gave me to prep for this, which is good because in most lives you'll find that there are many, right, that you might think of. Pulling it down to three, boiling it down to three was really important for me. The first, it will fall in the challenge category. I was at age 40. I was a traveling the world, working for the greatest sports magazine in the planet, Sports Illustrated. I felt like I was on top of everything. And then one day I play a lot of basketball, and one day I'm playing a guy swings an elbow, shatters my nose, and in the process of doing that, like it literally required a complete rebuild, essentially, of my nose surgically. And you would think they would have done better than what I have, but in the
You're
process
in good
of
company here.
yeah, in the process of the rebuild, the X-ray that they were taking of my face accidentally uh, uh, captured a little further down than it would have naturally, and the doctors pre-surgery said, well, there's something we see there, like right below your neck, that we want to check out while you're under. So I come out of the surgery several hours later. Good news, your nose is going to be fine. Bad news, while we had you under, we biopsied what we saw, and you have cancer. And so, you know, the challenge is, obviously I'm 40 years old, I'm healthy, I'm doing everything, and I suddenly realized that life, nobody, the C word never sounds good. Doesn't matter, what it is, when it is, where it comes to you in your life. It's not a good word, but it did cause a great amount of reframing for me. Um, at the time, to complete my treatment, it ended with 3 days in a lead-walled room at a hospital because they were running so much radiation through me that I was radioactive. I could have no human contact because I would endanger other people if because of the level of radioactivity in me, which they could do because I was young and healthy, right? And the during those 3 days, I don't think I'd ever spent 3 days alone in my life. I'd never just gone to be with me, right? And that was a real opportunity for digging in. And one of the big questions I asked was, what should I have accomplished by this age that I hadn't accomplished? And it wasn't professional because, frankly, professionally, I was kind of riding high. But I realized I had always believed I should, I would love to be a father, and I had missed on opportunities, and I just decided, I wasn't going to miss the next chance. And so that moment gave me an opportunity. The cancer caused me to stop and think, which sometimes we don't stop and think. So that was the benefit. But it leads to my second moment, which occurred 5 years later when I became a father for the first time at age 45. And so, most of my friends by that age are already sending their kids off to college, and I'm holding a newborn. But then I was able to have a second child. My wife and I did 13 months later. So um, I ended up with a son and a daughter. And here they are now, 15 and 16, and it's just fantastic. But that taught me again the value of understanding what really matters. For quite a while in my life, my achievements, my accomplishments, the bylines, the notoriety, the TV shows, all those other things mattered. You hold your first child, especially at an advanced age, right? If you would, 45, and everything changes. Like, you really do. You hear those stories. I would do anything. I would give anything. But it doesn't really resonate until that moment. And
Yeah.
so that gave me a healthy dose of the cancer gave me a dose of perspective, along with radiation. But it also but fatherhood gave me a true dose of what matters,
Yeah.
and that became far more important to me. My kids I love taking them with me. We travel a lot. My two children are, as I said, 15 and 16. They've been to 52 countries each,
Oh, wow.
which is for me the greatest source of pride I can have. Right, is that I
Mm,
get to expose them to a world that they're going to dominate, and I love that. Right, so
brilliant.
that's exciting.
Brilliant.
And then the third one, you heard me talk about at the Real Leaders event that we were part of. And that was an opportunity I had while writing a book with a young man whose mother was a police officer. She was shot and killed in a robbery at a bank. He went on to become an NFL football player, started a charity buying homes for women like his mother. His name is Warwick Dunn. He's unbelievable. Look him up if you can. But Warwick Dunn he because of the amount of the number of lives he's changing, he wins the NFL's Walter Payton Man of the Year award, which is meaningful for me because I got to live with Walter Payton as he was dying, which was fantastic and a great moment for me. But Warwick wins this award, gets a chance to tell his story in a book, asked me to be the writer, and to finish the book, he and I went to death row to meet the man that killed his mother.
Mm,
And while we were there, the man suddenly had a new story for where he really was and why he wasn't the guy that did it. And Warwick stopped him after a bit and said, "You know what? If you weren't there, I don't know why you're here today, but I'm here today to forgive you." And I watched the single greatest championship act I think I've ever seen. Forget everything else I've witnessed. I've never seen anything like that. And to watch Warwick live his character was a really opportunity was an opportunity for me to recognize um, that I need to be. He said to me, he said to the warden afterward. The warden said, "One day we'll execute this man, and when we do, you're invited to be here." And he said, "Do you want to come?" That's closure for some guys, for some families. And Warwick said, "No, I don't need to be here because as of today, he holds no power over me,"
mm,
which is the magic of forgiveness, right? That once you've chosen to forgive, um, the, uh, the other person in the equation holds no power over you anymore. And so those were if I had to pick my three, you just got them.
yeah, they're well, magic. Amazing. The three names for those, what would you call them if you had to give them a label title?
Well, cancer was an awakening for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, Fatherhood was I would say what matters.
Mm,
It would be, and then watching Warwick live his character, live, and actually forgive the unforgivable. Um, for me, I think forgive the unforgivable would be the phrase I'd use.
mm,
Because I I
yeah.
I think about that all the time, and what's happened to me that would make me even question whether I should forgive someone. Nothing compared to what Warwick did, and it's
No,
pretty
I
powerful.
mean, unbelievable to be able to have the strength of character to be able to do that, which is really inspirational. And I love the combination of these three. Incidentally, we share a role as what I call playing the old dad game, because I too had my first at 45,
Did you really?
and
Wow,
my
that's awesome.
second at 48, and I just tipped over 50 this weekend, and but the math on it, which you may have done your own version of this, was the awakening for me around how important that was, right? Because as you say, just holding a baby, and then it's hard to express how loved they are and how committed you are to them and how you literally would do anything for them. It's hard to put that into words, at least for me. But the math that really hit home for me, which was a motivation to start focusing on longevity, was when I worked out that, well, hang on, if Hudson waits as long as I did to have a kid, I'm going to be 90
90
if I
as a
make it that
grandfather.
long into
Right. Yeah.
grandfatherhood. So
Right.
I got to do what I need to do to take care of myself to even have a shot at that. So
That's awesome.
I hope he doesn't wait that long, but we'll we will see. But we talk a lot about perspective in coaching, and obviously you've coached some incredible leaders, some really successful folks, and I've always said there's a couple of things that across the board kind of stand out to me. I think from even just coaching really successful people. The first one is what you kind of described as just sort of taking a step back and reframing, right? Just so you had 3 days in a lead covered room to yourself where there was really nothing else to do but to
Right.
think,
Everything
be
I
with your own
brought in the
thoughts.
room, everything I brought in the room had to be incinerated. I could leave with
Mm.
nothing because everything I had in the room and that I would have touched would have become radioactive as well. So it was pretty intense
Wow.
to
So
walk in.
literally you could only leave with your own thoughts.
Right.
Yeah. And so the power of perspective, the power of reframing, which requires usually people to slow down, take a step back. And the other thing that I notice, I just summarize as knowing. It's really knowing yourself from inside out, really getting to know other people as people. I was interested in how you see perspective playing in coaching, but also just in leadership, and maybe a couple of examples where you've seen how somebody reframing their perspective that was already really successful has been an absolute game changer.
Well, you noted that I've got a few coaching clients, people who ask me to kind of on a monthly basis be engaged in their life and be engaged in their journey and trying to offer them kind of an outside view. And that's it's important but I also think one of the things that happens for so many is that the further up you go, the fewer people you have that you can kind of open up to. It's difficult if you're the leader, right? You're the leader, and everybody looks to you, and you're supposed to have all the answers. It's difficult to have to say, uh, "I'm I'm struggling here. I don't know what to do." And so, the importance of having people around you that can listen to you and that can open up for you. One of my coaching clients is just a fantastic uh, leader in the financial services space, and he runs a large firm with many billions of dollars under assets under management. Excuse me. Um, and in our work and our time together, I think, and we've been together for many years now, actually, is the opportunity for him to. Everybody else is always coming to his office. They need something from him, and I become kind of the release valve, right?
Mm.
And I think that's something all of us need and few of us get. Many people struggle. You can't really have a release valve at home because you have responsibilities there. You have things you have to do. If you're the leader of your organization or aspiring to be one, there's a fear of having to sit and say, I need, I need help right now, right? Because to get help, you have to admit a weakness.
Yeah.
And, and, uh, and unfortunately, weakness is perceived so poorly in most of our environment. And so I love the opportunity to get engaged with people and have a few questions, but mostly spend my time listening because
Mm.
what most people need are a good set of ears.
Yeah, agreed. And that's as you said, that's the value of the release valve that's good at asking thoughtful questions to help people reframe their own perspective just by having a narrative around it. And I think the other thing that related to perspective, that obviously we focus on a lot, in connecting with purpose, is purpose. And our definition of that is, in terms of a simple formula, is passion plus impact plus application. Now, passion we would describe as a number of things, which are things you care about, things you believe in, things you may be good at, things that you enjoy, things that energize you. So all of those sorts of things you could unpack around passion, and impact, we'll get to in a little bit. But I wanted to dive into passion a little bit. There's two obvious passions, it would seem, on the surface level at least. And now I would say three from having just spoken to you. But one for you, storytelling, obviously, at sports, it being another one. We spent so many years immersed in that world. And it sounds like maybe being a family man, maybe being a dad could be a passion as well. But if you had to think about those areas of your life and other passions that you may have, and let's just take storytelling as something that's just been kind of a core theme for you, obviously, throughout your entire career. What is it about storytelling that really lights you up?
I think the thing that I love most about storytelling is the ability to hold attention. And I think stories hold attention. And I think one of the things that in this day and age, with phones and computer, with so many things pulling at us at all times, emails flying in, and text messages, and social media, it's difficult to ask someone to stay locked in with you for a period of time unless you tell stories.
Mm,
And if you can tell the right stories to the people who you're being asked to speak to or engage with, whether it's one person or 1,000, if you can engage them properly with the right story, you have that opportunity to have incredible impact. It's funny when I teach storytelling, I kind of teach it around a series of habits that the best storytellers show. But when I teach it, I essentially say every great storyteller sees it in three phases, and it's so funny because it almost lines up with your plus plus. It's story, tell a good story, then you share the lesson that story taught you. What did you learn in the generation of that story? And then you show the application for the listener. So how can they do something with what you learned from the story?
mm,
Which means you're actually not just telling stories because there's a campfire in front of you, and or your 3-year-old needs somebody to tell him a story at bedtime. You're telling stories with purpose.
mm,
And stories with purpose always land with something for the listener. That's the application. Story, lesson, application. You do it in that order, and you have an enormous opportunity to take a point of purpose, which for me is storytelling, yes, um, and actually make it a point of impact.
I love that, and I'm excited to build the bridge actually to the impact piece. And those three phases, story, lesson, application, are so important, aren't they, for people? If you've got somebody's attention and you're able to then frame that around what you got out of it, and then enable them to take something forward that enables them to do something differently, or do something better, or say something to somebody that they wish they'd have said, whatever that action might be, because that's what the application is. It's somebody's individual
Right.
takeaway, isn't it, and their own perspective on it. And you've said, and this might have been in your art of storytelling manual that you gave us at Real Leaders, but you said that stories help us create meaning, trust, value, and connection. And I would literally say exactly the same things about purpose.
Hmm.
right? Because in that definition that we have, passion plus impact plus application, but also if you just say, well, what is purpose? Purpose is living intentionally at the intersection between those two things, between those passions and between the impact. And the intentionality obviously is where the application comes in. What's your connection from storytelling to purpose? Or do you just feel like literally storytelling is an extension of you as your purpose?
I think storytelling is an extension to me as my purpose. When people ask me, I get asked all the time, well, gosh, with all these incredible experiences and the people you've worked with, when are you going to write your book? And it's like that's not on the bingo card. And the reason that that's not available or is not in the plans or the works is because I kind of look at my purpose as helping other people tell their story. And in that opportunity to work with people who are extraordinary and have extraordinary stories and to have let them uh, create a glide path for their story to become an opportunity to impact others. I get impacted, right? That's number one. I'm better for everybody I get a chance to work with, whose journey I get a chance to chronicle. I'm learning something from everybody that I get a chance to work with. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I get to pick who I get to write with, and in that process, I get the chance to learn from every one of them. It's awesome, right? It's a
Mm.
daily. I'm still in class every day. Um, but then secondly, I allow the world to appreciate. So left to their own devices, many people can't tell their story very well. They don't know how to create a framework for that story that expresses less than an application. They just tell stories,
Mm.
and stories with purpose have lessons and applications in them. And so if you my job is to help pull from them not just what happened, which anybody can get that, but what did it do to you,
Mm.
and what did that do for others? And in that process of doing that, I believe I'm kind of uniquely positioned to help a lot of people tell their stories and tell them well.
Yeah, I love that, and that really is that if your purpose is helping other people tell their story so they can impact other people or impact the world, like that, that's it, right? And
Well, I had the opportunity many years ago to work with Stephen Covey.
yeah,
His children hired me to write his autobiography, and it was pretty fascinating. He has 9 children, and I got the chance to work with the Covey family for almost 2 years before Stephen passed. And the one thing he said to me that just still hangs out there every day, I think about it all the time, is what are you doing to multiply your impact?
mm,
And for him, it was writing books, speaking in a way that allowed him to pass along to others, ways that they could then go on and pass it on to someone beyond them. Creating coaching programs, all those other things. I don't have all of that, but his idea about you should in every day be thinking about what am I doing to multiply my impact,
mhm.
and that's where I get my juice.
Yeah, and well, let's stay on impact because you've already kind of articulated something very similar to what we look at from an impact perspective, which is a super, super simple model, three-dimensional view of impact, which is me, we, and world.
Hmm.
And you said, well, yeah, just by me being able to choose some of the folks that I work with, I'm questioning, listening to them and helping them. And in that process, I'm learning, right? So you're still
Hmm.
a student of the game. That's your me impact, right? Just that
Right.
having that curiosity and being able to continue to learn yourself. And then there's a we and a world piece to that. Um, when you think about, if you like, your we impact is the impact you would have had on all of the people that you've chosen to surround yourself with.
Mm.
And the world impact is anything that sits beyond that. When you start thinking about trying to articulate the impact you're having through the vehicles of storytelling, through the vehicles of coaching, through the vehicles of speaking, what would be some themes or words you would use that you'd be really proud of that would articulate the impact you've been able to have on others in that kind of we and world dimension?
Mm. So probably if I had to pick a highlight of my writing career, what, we get a lot every once in a while. There's good stuff going on. Um, but there was a moment a few years ago. I was working on a book with a guy that won the Masters golf tournament two times, named Bubba Watson, right? Bubba Watson, fantastic lefty golfer, interesting. It was just a really interesting guy, and but dealt with high levels of depression, anxiety. He had all kinds of challenges that gave him that he had to fight through in order to become the person that I was getting a chance to work with. And it was one of, as you've identified, in the process of working on a book, you get to know somebody pretty well. You get to know somebody well enough, you can ask them questions that most people will never ask them. You get to challenge them in ways that most people never challenge them because they're stars or they're super, they're whatever. Over that journey with Bubba, we finished the book. It was fantastic. And the week that the book came out, NBC did a feature on Bubba and his book because they were doing the Masters, right? And or not NBC, excuse me, CBS. And when they're doing this feature with Bubba, they said, well, how many books do you hope this sells? I mean, what do you hope? And he says, you know what? If it doesn't sell one, I'm better for having gone through the journey. Don asking me the questions, challenging me, making me think about things I wouldn't naturally think about because we want to ignore certain aspects of our life. I'm better just for the opportunity that was presented here. And if it doesn't sell a single book, I'm better. And that always stood out to me. Like I've hung on to that for quite some time because I love that that's the way Bubba felt about the experience. And I would say, having talked to many of the others, Deion Sanders, Warwick Dunn, John Wooden, many of the others I've had a chance to write books with, they would tell you the same thing. The ability to get into that kind of relationship, have somebody ask them those kinds of questions, push them to develop their answers well, made them better and opened doors that they had previously closed. And that for me is a real, if I think of impact on the we stand, like between me and them, that's a real direct opportunity. And then, the world is just the world is there's a, I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and be a little arrogant here. There's a reason why, as you pointed out in the introduction, I have 12 New York Times bestsellers. And part of that is because I write books with a lot of really interesting people that the world is fascinated by. And in that process of doing that, these books sell a lot, which means I'm getting a chance through my podcast, which we talked about, through my books, through my speaking, to touch people I would in no other way have an opportunity to influence. And so I get a chance to learn great stories from people. I get a chance to tell them in a multitude of fashions, right? Podcast, books, speaking. And in that, I get a chance to project into the world much of what I've learned. And that is that's kind of, I guess, my world impact.
Yeah, amazing. And you said, "Oh, I'm going to be a little arrogant for a second," but I didn't hear arrogance there at all. I heard pride. I just think you have been able to work with some incredible people. You're an incredible storyteller, and the fact that what kind of lights you up the most about that is the fact you're able to reach and influence people that otherwise you wouldn't be able to reach. Which is not too dissimilar to standing on the platform of a stage. Instead of just having that one-on-one conversation as you're helping somebody tell their story in a way that has both lessons and application for others, you're able to do the same thing through public speaking. And there's just a big multiplier there, isn't there?
It is.
If there was three lessons that you hoped people were able to go on and apply And I know this is an incredibly hard question given the amount of lessons you have both taught and learnt and shared. But if there was three primary things that in that kind of world dimension you just wish people would take on and apply that could have this kind of a ripple effect to that world impact that you were talking about, what would the three lessons be you'd love people to take away from all of those stories that you've been able to tell?
Just the first one, and probably the most dominant one, is the idea you touched on it earlier. I think what allows it to work for me is I'm a passionate learner. I'm a lifelong learner, right? We've heard that phrase. I'm looking to learn something every day from everybody. And so, is that the way you're approaching relationships? And if you are, what level of curiosity are you bringing to those relationships? Is it about you being able to tell people how awesome you are? Or is it about you being able to learn and listen and ask great questions? So it's about learning, curiosity, asking great questions. That'd be number one. I think, secondly, it would be then about how to take that, assimilate it, and be able to share it with others. And
Mm,
I do think there's an art to that, and I work consistently. I read other great storytellers. I listen to other great storytellers. I'm always in this process of trying to to understand what are they doing and why. What allowed that to? Are you kidding me? That was an hour? That just happened? I felt like that just started. And and then, I think the third piece of it is the ability to use whatever you have to build relationships that um that can impact you forever. I'm
mm,
I have people because of the doors that have been opened, because of those skill sets that I've been lucky enough to develop. Um, People have opened up doors for me to learn and to be with them and to be in relationship with them that would naturally never have happened. Right?
yeah.
I'm just a sports writer from Ball State University. I'm not supposed to be in this place, um, but those skill sets allowed me to be in this place, and I honored it. I honored those opportunities by developing relationships with people that will stick with me forever.
Yeah, and I mean that is the value of treating relationships with curiosity and questioning, so that you can help people get to a better place and learn something from it yourself. But then being able to articulate and share that with others, which is the ripple effect, and it's the ripple effect of leadership as well. If you're able to empower other people to pass these things on, but that in doing so, which is basically by treating people as people for the right reasons, you
Hmm.
build a support team that's an impact multiplier. And
Hmm.
it's obviously been this kind of impact multiplier for you. Now, it'd be remiss of me to not talk about sports for quite a lot of very obvious reasons. One of which just being the fact that that's what this season is about. And you spoke about Bubba, and obviously a number of the people you've had the opportunity to work with over time. When you think about sports, and obviously your corporate competitive podcast is a big focus on this. Where um, where do you see some of the opportunities to bridge from this, if you like, maybe the world of what people see as sports and professional sports and athletics over here, and the world of corporate America over here? From all of the conversations you've had, what's the bridge in terms of those, if you like, the primary characteristics that you feel like those competitors have learned through sport that they've then been able to bring to business?
Oh, I think they're myriad. I think the list of things that people who have participated in sports bring into the workplace, discipline, right? You have to be disciplined to be on in any sport. You have to discipline yourself when no one's watching, right? That's a real value as opposed to doing everything only when others are watching. You have to learn how to win, right? What does it mean to win? How do you do it? You have to learn how to lose. Losing happens, and when it does, how you conduct yourself. You have to learn how to be a great teammate. How do I make you better? How do I make other people better? Um, Very little is achieved strictly on my own. In fact, left to my own, if I'm in the world of sports, I'm probably not 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 a championship level player. I need others around me, but how do I make others around me better?
Yeah.
Um, you start adding all these. What does it mean to be a great teammate? What does it mean to how do I work to drive the best of myself? Like
Mm,
what are the points of differentiation that I can use to separate myself from other people? How do I pay attention to those things, and not appear arrogant, right? To
mm.
appear as if I'm in this to grow every day, and how do I make sure that I'm growing every day? Anyway, I think the list of things that people involved in sports, as you well know from your history, that can then go on and use in the workplace. I think the list is it's longer than my arm.
Yeah, well, and you've got the book up there, haven't you? The 16, sorry, consistent characteristics of greatness. I'm guessing that's what the one is on the top, your
Yep,
top
that's
right,
it. Yep.
as you face backwards. But and you've articulated a number of those, and another one that stood out for me, and this is a little bit of a segue into the bit of time you had the opportunity to spend with the New Zealand All Blacks. Only because it seems to have been a characteristic that they have shown time and time again, which is this kind of having the ice in the veins. It's also been described as having a blue head, and
Right.
that ability. It's more than resilience. It's ability to almost embrace pressure and use pressure for performance. It's almost
Mhm.
anti-fragility, right? It's this sort of in the heat of the battle when absolutely everything is on the line, you can still make the right decisions. Um, to what extent have you observed that in that team, in other athletes, and just the extension of that is, how's that translated through to an example of somebody that you've interviewed that took that from sports and translated it through to business? Because right now there's a lot of craziness and pressure, and I would imagine if there's one thing a leader could embrace, it would be having that ability to keep a cool head despite everything they see around them.
I think it comes back to a point that's been discussed pretty regularly in this conversation is perspective, right?
Mm,
The truly great athletes I've been blessed to learn from and work with will say to you that pressure is a privilege, right? Most people think of pressure as something that is that's going to take me down. Oh my gosh, look at this pressure I'm feeling, and oh, how difficult is this? And but the great ones, they look at pressure. Pressure only comes your way
yeah,
if you're privileged enough to be in the moment.
yeah,
And so, how do you reframe? And if you see it as a privilege, as opposed to discounting it as a burden, if you see it as a privilege, what happens is you you enter energized for the
yeah,
pressure, right? And as opposed to being deflated or coming shoulder slope because you're afraid of what might happen because of the pressure. Energy is reflected in how you approach it, but it comes down to it starts right here, the 8 inches
yeah,
between your ears. And if you can navigate that, if you can convince yourself that that this is your gift, you've been gifted this
yeah,
opportunity. For a moment like this, you were made, right? When you can tell yourself that and believe it, it says, I will think more clearly because I'm not thinking about the pressure. I'm thinking about the fact that for a moment like this, I was made.
yeah. Absolutely love that. And I think I'm not sure if it was original. I've seen that quote attributed to Billie Jean King. I think
Billie
the
Jean
pressure
King.
is,
Yeah, it actually,
yeah,
if you go to the U.S. Open, Arthur Ashe Stadium, when you walk out of the locker room toward that quote hangs on the wall right before every player walks out, which I always love. I mean, Billie Jean's fantastic, and obviously that she said it is unbelievable. I'm sure there are other people that have said some version of it, but that it hangs there so that the last thing a player sees as they walk out onto center court, at Arthur Ashe that's just powerful.
Yeah, bring that energy to the moment,
Right.
because it's a privilege. It's brilliant. One last question on sports before we go. We're going to close out with a few questions back to you. But despite some of the incredible characteristics that folks have developed through playing sports, there seems to be quite a big challenge for athletes in transitioning from that identity and that community and that structure and everything into what might be corporate America. And it doesn't say that corporate America is the right place for everybody, but what do you see as being some of the best practices from folks that you've had the opportunity to speak to that maybe did struggle with transition, but then found their way? What were some of the things they did that enabled them to translate some of what they'd learned over here and sort of reinvent themselves in this new context?
So first off, I would say that I don't think this is unique to sports. I think there are military veterans who transition whose transition is difficult. I think there are other civil servants. There are political figures who struggle to transition. Right.
Yeah.
First, many people struggle to move from one identity, if you will, right, to another. Frankly, I struggled. I'll be honest with you. When I was at Sports Illustrated, the greatest job in the world in my profession, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, right? It was the dominant force in the industry. If you were good and you wanted to be in that world, you wanted to work at Sports Illustrated. You wanted to have that card.
Yeah.
And then one day I didn't, because they offered an early retirement package. I'd just become a dad. It was a perfect time for me to step away. And in all of that, I thought I was doing all these great things and no problem. But my wife actually, about 8 months after I take the retirement, said, "Don, don't you think it's time you change your voicemail on your phone? Like, that your voicemail says, 'Hey, this is Don Yaeger from Sports Illustrated.' Are you still struggling? Are you struggling to let go of that?" Yes, I was, because it was my identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us, I think but in answer to your larger question, the way you get past it is you understand that identity was a season, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything we know, it's that life is filled with seasons. The year in sports is filled with seasons. We may win a bunch of games in a row. We may lose a bunch in a row. But at the end of the day, we have to see what's happening as a season. And when you can understand there will be a new season, and you can attach your mind to that. That one of the challenges for many athletes, many folks in the military, is that you're so locked in order to be best in class. You can't think about the next season, right?
Yeah.
You have to think about today and only today. And so suddenly now it is the next season and I haven't prepared for it.
Yeah.
So, but I think it comes down to that, again, it's perspective. It's understanding that we're on to a new season.
Yeah, 100%. And I completely agree with you. It's not, transition is hard, period. Change is hard for anybody. And it's just that in a similar way to the military, other than obviously what's on the line being completely amplified and different, that you have to be so immersed in that, the rituals and the routines and the practices and everything that you do, that it becomes part of your identity, it becomes part of your ego, it becomes part of how you're known. And you have to sort of reinvent yourself. And that's where we lean a lot into purpose for people, because when purpose sits way below your actual title, even though you had that role, that specific title at Sports Illustrated, at heart, you're a storyteller.
Right.
You don't have to just work at Sports Illustrated to be a storyteller, to be able to influence people, to be able to make an impact. It just happened to be a pretty powerful platform for that, right? And once you understand the other ways you can do it, it starts to help you apply them into that new season. So I thank you for sharing that. So just to wrap up, last couple of questions. I was calling this a 2-minute warning, and then I was like, well, that's a little bit too American sports for me. So I'm going to call it the final advantage, which is a bit more of a rugby term. But it's just a couple of quick questions. You've already mentioned pressure as a privilege. I just wondered whether there was a quote from the folks that either you've worked with, or just a quote that you like to keep front of mind that kind of keeps you focused on what matters.
I do. The great John Wooden, who I had a chance to work with for many years before writing a book together, um, used to say to me, to make each day your masterpiece.
Wow.
And that sounds really simple, right? I'm just going to make today a masterpiece. The truth is, it's very difficult, right? It means I have to be well prepared for my day. It means I have to be fully present in my day. It means I have to bring others along in my day. To make today a masterpiece is a challenge. But if I do it and I string 7 of them together, it's a pretty good week, right? If I could do this more than 7 times, I could create a pretty amazing month. And my job is to but I can't focus on making my life a masterpiece. I have to make today a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And so John Wooden's encouragement to me to make each day my masterpiece is one that hangs on the wall and is with me all the time.
Brilliant. Oh, I absolutely love that. What about to perform at your best? That's something that you keep front of mind. What would you just say would be your top 2 to 3 characteristics that have enabled you to continue performing, continue making an impact? When you keep these 3 characteristics front of mind, you feel like you've got a good opportunity to build that masterpiece for the day.
Well, I think it's curiosity. I wake every day like, what am I going to learn today? Right? How will I go to bed tonight better than I woke up? And again, that sounds simple too. Yeah, of course I'm going to be better. Of course I'm going to learn something. But are you intentional about it? So so curiosity is one, intentional is the second, because for me, too many people go through the day and just wait to see what happens to them. I'm a person of intent, of high intent. I'm constantly thinking about what I'm going to get from everything I try to do throughout the day. And then, finally, I think it's that ability to kind of help others tell their story, help others. I just really believe that's my superpower. My superpower is listening to your story long enough that I can tell you, okay, you just said it to me, but you buried the lead. The thing that people will need most to know about you, you said in the 3rd hour, right? And let's reframe this. Let's put it in the right order. And if we do that, we have a chance to take your story and better the lives of others.
Brilliant. Absolutely love that. And where is the best place for folks to find you, follow you, Don?
Well, I appreciate the couple of times you've mentioned Corporate Competitor Podcast. It's an incredibly meaningful thing that I get a chance to do every week, to interview and learn from somebody and share that learning. I even end every interview by telling the audience, the listener, here are 3 things I took from today that will make me better. Corporatecompetitorpodcast.com is a great place to do that. It's on all platforms. And then the second is just the website, donyaeger.com. And my last name is often misspelled, so I own multiple spellings of my own name, and they all redirect to the right website. So unless you really butcher it, you're going to find me.
All right, brilliant. And one last question. You may or may not choose to answer this because you already said that there won't be an autobiography. John Register even asked me to ask you who was going to write your biography. Instead, I'm just going to say, hypothetically, if somebody did ever write an autobiography or a biography about you, what would you want the title to be?
Oh my gosh. I've never given that a second's thought. But I hope it would be, I don't know. I hope it would have something to do with curiosity, because I think that's That's where I've made my mark, is just by being constantly curious. Maybe that would be the
Um,
title, Constantly
the,
Curious.
love it. And I mean, and just so much humility in that answer, even than the fact that you've never even thought about it, which I really
Mm.
appreciate. Look, Don, thank you so much for your time. We completely used all of it up, and I hope I haven't overrun for whatever you have coming next.
I'm
Absolute
getting ready
pleasure to
I'm
talk to
getting
you
ready to
today.
teach I'm getting ready to teach a virtual class on the art of storytelling. So it's
All
my
right.
favorite thing. Get to go
Well,
do that next.
I better let you get off to that, John. Thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure.
Mark, thank you.
Cheers.